Good evening, everybody. With the time being 7:07, I'd like to call the Government Operations Committee to order. Can I please have roll call?
Bongard.
Here.
Munns.
Here.
Lencioni.
Yes.
Gem.
Here.
Petrilla.
Here.
Warble.
Here.
Bessner.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Sulkitis.
Here.
Folks.
Here. Great. Thank you very much. Next up, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the omnibus item. Moved by Munn, seconded by Gem. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. That is approved. Next up, we have item 5A. Deputy Chief Majewski is going to do the presentation on this one.
Good evening. This item appeared earlier for the local liquor commission with a recommendation for approval, unanimous. This business is a nail salon located behind Syrup off Randall Road. The applicant, Chung, and his son were at the meeting earlier for the liquor commission. They're not here right now, so I apologize. I can't answer questions, but I can. They're looking to expand their services, which is a nail salon, to include complimentary alcohol, wine, or champagne. The applicant is not a past liquor holder this first time, and they're renovating the business, and it should be open the end of October, early October, to turn it into a nail salon. So if you guys have any questions, I can answer whatever I can.
Any questions for Deputy Chief?
Move for approval.
Seeing none, I have a motion to approve by Warball, seconded by Petrillo. Roll call, please.
Bongard.
Yes.
Munns.
Yes.
Lencioni.
Yes.
Gem.
Yes.
Petrilla.
Yes.
Warble.
Yes.
Bessner.
Yes.
Sulkitis.
Yes.
Folks.
Yes. Right, that item
Thank
carries.
you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Majewski. Next up, we have item 7A. Chief Swanson is going to make a presentation regarding the natural hazardous mitigation plan. Some light reading. Are you going to read through the whole thing?
Yeah. You want to be up here all night? It's only 680 pages or something like that. This is a routine process. Ever since 2000, the county's done a plan every 5 years. St. Charles participates in it. We look at the different hazards throughout the county, including in St. Charles. It becomes codified as part of a county plan. We adopt it here at the city. The last cycle was 2016, which has thrown us off slightly because of COVID. They took a couple of years out. Now in 2024, they're coming through with the update. So it's substantial, as you could see in your packet, and this is what it looks like printed out. So if you have insomnia, it's a definite cure. But the only section I would recommend reviewing going forward is Volume 2, page 184, for about 4 or 5 pages. That's the part that deals with everything in St. Charles, all the stuff that's been done, all the stuff that's in process. So with that, kind of long-winded, but I would ask for approval and adoption of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan of Kane County for 2024.
Thank you, Chief Swanson. Any questions?
Move for approval.
Second. So I have a motion by Bongard, seconded by Warball. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. That item is approved.
Thank you.
Chief Swanson. Next up, we have item 8A. Bill Hanna, the Finance Director, is going to make a presentation. Go ahead, Bill. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Weber, and good evening. Tonight on the agenda is a recommendation to approve the 2024 property tax levy estimate in the amount of $24,250,598. I have a short overview to summarize all the information that was included in the packet, so obviously there's opportunity for questions and discussion during and at the end of it. Just a reminder, tonight we're approving the estimate for the 2024 levy. That estimate becomes the basis for truth and taxation disclosure. This estimate would then be formally approved at the City Council meeting November 4th, and the actual levy adoption would not occur until December 2nd. So as a reminder, the city is a home rule entity, and we are not subject to PTEL, which is the property tax extension limitation law affecting non-home rule municipalities and other taxing bodies. Just wanted to recap last year's 2023 tax levy before we go into this year's recommended tax levy for 2024. So as a reminder, property taxes compose about 23% of all general fund revenues. roughly $15 million out of the $65.7 million in revenues that the city receives on an annual basis. Property taxes are a very stable, important revenue source for the city. They are an elastic revenue source, so they do not fluctuate up and down as changes in the economy occur. So it provides a stabilizing effect against some of our other elastic revenue sources like sales tax. Of the $15 million that the city receives, $14.6 million is the subject of the general tax levy that we're discussing tonight, and the remaining amounts there are really related to the special service areas of the city for primarily SSA 1A and 1B. This graphic, I know we have displayed this before. This is a reminder that 10% of the homeowner's property tax bill is related to taxes that are levied by the city. The other 90% comes from the school district, park district, community college district, Kane County, and various other taxing bodies as well. So St. Charles really is just that small 10% portion of the bill. So I wanted to recap the last year's levy numbers and do it in a way to summarize it into essentially two different categories. We have what I call our general purpose levies of corporate, fire, police protection, as well as an amount levied for mental health purposes. Those portions of the levy totaled roughly $7.1 million last year. We also levied an amount that is required to be levied for the city's required police and fire pension contributions based on the actuarial valuation results we do at the end of the fiscal year. That component was roughly $7.4 million. When you look at the graphic table to the right, those two components get us to that $14.6 million number that we talked about earlier, being the portion of our general fund budget. There is an amount that we actually include in our levy ordinance for our general obligation debt, principal, and interest payments. That amount last year was $9.8 million. The city abates that amount and does not extend property taxes towards that amount. We pay that with water, sewer, electric, general revenues, or TIF revenues, whatever the original source of the project was that's generating now for repayment of those bonds. So this chart outlines the history of those sort of general categories of property tax purposes over the last 10 years. You can see the most recent number of $14.6 million on your right. And over time, as the city's actuarial valuations for police and fire have increased over the years, they've taken a greater percentage and share of the overall property tax levy. That has resulted in less dollars being available for general purposes going forward. So you see the red line increasing, that blue line for the general purposes going down. Over the last 9 years, you can see the history of the changes to the levy off on the side there. Some of that's based on extensions, so it may not match to an exact percentage at a certain time. The counties have to reconcile that through their levy process. Over the last 6 years, the average increase has been about 3.25%. So moving on to the 2024 estimate, there were a few considerations that we kept in mind as we were discussing the upcoming levy estimate. The city had a very good actuarial valuation for both police and fire this year. There was excellent investment returns, good actuarial experience. So the combination of both of those components of the levy only increased 0.46%, or about $34,000. A couple other things we took into consideration that happen annually as far as new construction. The city has roughly at this point in time $9.2 million in new construction added to the EAV rolls for the city. That's roughly a 0.5% increase over the current EAV. The city terminated TIF 3, and that's generated an EAV recovery of about $24 million based on the current estimates from the county. That's roughly a 1.2% increase on the EAV side. And that's really going to be the ultimate recommendation for consideration discussion, is the total of those two components equaling about 1.7%. Some other factors that have gone into consideration include we've had continued moderate increases in the cost of providing city services. We are still transferring money to not only our capital fund, but also our water and sewer fund to help support some of those critical capital projects. We do have a strong general capital project reserve, but funds are needed not only for roads, but the underlying infrastructure associated with those roads as we continue with our city's increased road program, in addition to other utility work, bike and ped improvements, and other types of capital projects that need to be done in the city. So all those factors went into kind of considering this levy estimate request tonight. So this is the 24 property tax levy estimate that's included in the packet. The general category, as we talked about earlier, those amounts increasing between 2.8 and 3.08%. We did increase the mental health board levy from $660,000 to $680,000, consistent with the goal to try and keep that number close to sort of a 4-cent overall property tax rate. That rate has declined a little bit over the years because of significant increases in EAB, but it's still roughly in that neighborhood. The two pension fund levy components equal 0.46%. And that gets us to the 1.7% recommended levy increase for discussion tonight as the official estimate. Again, on the side, we had just notes regarding excellent actuarial performance this year. 1.7% would capture those additional EAV changes that we talked about without having any impact to existing payers. That is subject to ultimately the EAV changes that happen at the county level and how the county winds up looking at everyone's assessed value versus the whole and each other. So those changes will impact ultimately what people pay, but that's ultimately done at the county level, not the city level. We do anticipate with this levy increase that the city tax rate will go down. It's hard to say exactly how much. Right now that rate's roughly 0.82. I think at least a 5% decrease in the city's overall property tax rate is fair to estimate at this point in time. We won't know the final numbers until later this spring, but that's a fair estimate. So that leaves our total levy recommendation at the bottom of $24.2 million. Just a reminder, the $9.3 million you see for bond and interest payments will be abated. That number is down from the $9.8 million last year, so that's good news. That kind of a little bit less of a debt service burden that we're taking on in our other funds, but that gets us to our 24.250 levy recommendation estimate. So that is the end of my overview, and happy for discussion.
Great. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks, Bill. Great presentation. I want to make sure, kind of restate this and make sure that I have a correct understanding, because there's a lot of great work that goes into this, and it is very complicated to figure out. However, I think nuts and bolts, what we have here is a $0 increase on properties, forecasted properties that were on the tax rolls last year, and the increase is new properties on the tax rolls.
That's correct. What we're doing is realizing the fiscal impact from that new development.
Yeah.
And that is where those additional dollars are coming from, not from the existing.
I think that's incredibly responsible. I know we have big projects coming in the future, but because those things are coming together, I think that's an incredibly responsible approach to take this year with a $0 increase on existing properties on the tax roll and just taking growth. I know that that's not always possible, but I applaud the administration for doing it this year. I know there are big projects coming in the future, and it won't always be the case. But thank you very much for clearing up.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I appreciate your, kind of thinking outside the box. We've talked about this already in terms of, taxing. You said that incremental or that additional, value with the developments. However, the one thing that kind of stuck out of my mind when I read your proposal and the memo too was there's an assumption still, and you hit the nail right on the head, that the county, when will we know, just can you refresh my memory, when, the final EAV numbers, because there's still that big assumption about what they'll finally evaluate and everything. Because we have a November deadline and a December. Will we know before any of those?
So the earliest we would have any further estimates is typically would be in the springtime.
Spring, okay.
And so, and those EAVs they usually send out a tentative and then a final in April when they do the final tax extensions, and they're able to figure out exactly how those taxes are going to be apportioned and distributed based on the EAVs.
So that's great. I mean, I appreciate that, and it's a huge assumption, not a huge assumption, but it's an assumption. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. I think, for me, I'm feeling comfortable. I like this model, but I'm feeling comfortable at this moment, just an FYI, to not support this at this time until we talk more before December. I want to talk more about the budget as well. So that's just my thoughts.
Go ahead, Ron.
Thanks, Bill, for your presentation. I'm just curious how it says it will not add any additional increase in property taxes on existing taxpayers. But last year the EAV was increased 3%, and then there was an estimate on the amount each taxpayer could expect based on a $300,000 valuation. So is there something in the statutes or the county where it allows us to specifically tax only new development or TIFs, or how does that work?
There's nothing in the statute. It really goes down to the formula that's in place. So all the taxing bodies approve and send their levies on to the county. The county essentially, distributes that, to all the ratepayers within that tax code based on the final EAVs that are determined. So it's really just a function of dollars levied and divided by EAV, and the new construction gets added as additional bonus on top of that. So there would be, and I'm going off of what last year's memo said. We had, I think it was like $24 for the whole year. $24 for $2 a month was.
So would there be an estimate on this for each homeowner?
So the estimate is essentially zero, because we were only trying to capture the additions to the EAV through the new construction and the EAV recovery versus a general estimate about what an illustrative impact would be. Last year, I believe it was $24 a year for a $300,000 home, if I recall correctly. So this is taking just a slightly different approach in terms of how you look at things and coming up with this levy estimate for this year based on those considerations.
Could we have done something like this in the past? Is this something that we could apply in, like, going forward or in the past, or is this a one-time method approach that you're taking this year?
I think it made sense from the perspective of having the dollar value of new construction along with that EAV TIF recovery at the same time. So I think it provided a opportunity to look at things a slightly different way. Doesn't mean that we can't do it in the future, but we're trying to at least take a measured, incremental approach, with this upcoming levy in this specific year.
Okay. So I just want to learn more about this, how this works before I support it. I'm open to the idea. The other thing I'll just say, and I mentioned it last year, is I always would like to at least go over the budget prior to, even though this may not impact anybody, anytime we ask for money, I'd like to just go over the budget. And I don't know if that's a possibility in the future. You don't need to answer that now, but I think that's doing my due diligence. But I'm going to sit on this, and maybe we can have a conversation over the next few weeks and talk more about it. But for tonight, I'm not going to vote in favor of it.
Go ahead, Mark.
Everything here, Bill, I appreciate, like, as you said, looking outside the box here. If we don't go with this, what's the next option?
Well, the city needs to approve a formal estimate. This levy estimate is essentially the ceiling. So the final levy estimate could be something, the final levy that's approved could be something different, but this action to be approved in 2 weeks by city council establishes that truth in taxation sort of threshold.
Okay.
So then that sort of provides that sort of ceiling that the ultimate levy is going to be that or something different.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. This is all new to me. I mean, I'm not totally understanding how you can raise property taxes on one group of homes, but not on another. That's something that I'd like to have that discussion with you, which brings up my problem that I have problems supporting this, because all I had was a weekend to research this, and that to me is not enough time to make this decision, because we don't know what the budget's gonna be for other increases. So we have a 1.7 increase here for new developments. We don't know what it's gonna bring for other potential increases in any other user fees or anything with the budget. And to Brian's point, we're making decisions that we don't have all the information yet. We're making assumptions that what's going to go up in the future when we actually get down to the budget number. I wish we could have a way where we could actually have the numbers first to see, okay, is there something, instead of raising the levy, could we do something else in another part of the budget to compensate for this? So, yeah, at this time, I wouldn't support it. Now, maybe in December when the time comes, I might. But right now, without the information I have, I would have to vote no tonight. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So, Bill, if you don't have the support for the 1.7 tonight, then what happens?
I think that the city council could come up with a different recommendation tonight, or there could be, it would push everything back an additional 2 weeks. And so we shoot for having the levy approved the first meeting in December so that we have a buffer to get the final levy approved in case there's an issue that may come up.
So if somebody made a motion to table this till December so that the people who had more questions on 1.7, different levels, would that be adequate time to get some of the questions answered?
It would be manageable, but we wouldn't have any additional time in case something came up that we needed to address. So, and keep in mind, this only approves an estimate. This doesn't bind the city to that number at a future meeting. It's just approving that estimate. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Jamie.
So I am also not a professional at most of the things that come up in front of us from the Public Works Department, but I do trust that department when they come up and ask us to, build a new septic system or dig trenches or things like that. I do not need to know how that mechanically works. And in the same fashion, I trust that Director Hanna understands the financial implications and the mechanics under which this would work. I do not believe that what he is saying are assumptions. I believe that these are the legal mechanics of how we actually assess these taxes. And I also understand this to mean that what we're asking is for these new construction properties to be bringing them up to paying the level of tax that they need to be, because they're currently not, because they are in these new construction districts. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is why we would not want to do that, why we would want to allow them to be paying less tax than what all of our current residents are paying, and then underfund the city by not passing something like this. So I guess that would be my question to people who are interested in not passing this.
So just a comment on to that, what you had said, Alderperson, is the levy, by levying an amount equivalent to the new AV that's brought on, what had come up in these discussions was, we talk about, development having a positive fiscal impact on the city. And the only way to do that is to actually levy to extend, what the city is levying to capture the growth of that to have a fiscal impact. So that is what is happening right now. If we don't do that, then the total dollars are just kept the same, and the additional values of those new properties and new construction that come on, everyone's kind of, paying a slightly different amount then.
Okay. With that being said, for tonight's purpose. This is a preliminary estimate, so the way that is currently, item 8A is currently worded, is there a motion and a second to vote on 8A the way that it's worded right now?
Mr. Chair.
Moved by Lencioni.
Second.
Seconded by Munn. Can I please have a roll call vote on that?
Bungard,
No.
Munns,
Yes.
Lencioni,
Yes.
Gams,
Yes.
Petrula,
No.
Wirbel,
No.
Messner,
Yes.
Kulturitis,
No.
Folks.
Yes.
That item carries. Thank you very much. Once again, that's just a preliminary estimate. This will be in front of us again on November 4th. Is there any need for anyone here for public comment tonight? I do not see any. Any additional items from mayor, council, or staff? I do not see any. No reason for executive session tonight, so I'm looking for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Munn, seconded by Wirbal. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.